right, here we go. Episode 9. Welcome to
Who's Corner. All right, we are on with Timothy Bolen, coach extraordinaire. He's my actual endurance coach, and I met him a while back. I actually ran my first marathon and just had a horrible experience. It was probably one of the worst experiences I had, and didn't train, didn't eat properly, thought I could just be a rock star, and bonked halfway through. And I decided to hire a coach that knows what he's actually doing, because these extreme sports are intense, and you have to kind of understand how your body works for you to be able to do all the things that you do. And he came highly recommended by very close peers of mine. And I never looked back. Great coach. Timothy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here and excited to dive into an area that you know I love.
Yes. And if you don't know Tim, he is a former pro triathlete, pro marathoner, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I think, what's your PR in your marathon that I heard? It was some absurd number I could never reach.
2:18.
2:18. If anybody in the audience has run a 2:18 marathon, like, God bless you, because as the only person I know personally that can run that fast, or has ever done that in their historic past. So it's a pretty impressive time. I believe you were in the running for the Olympics, right? Like I think for the
I was trying to qualify for the Olympic trials, and
yes.
I got to about mile 22, and I was running with a group of about 4, and we were right on that 2:18 pace, and I just slowly but surely started losing a second here and a second there, and it got to mile 24, and I lost like 10 seconds, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to make that up.
So he was a legitimate runner.
Yeah.
You know, with the elite class, one of the, the fastest runners out there. And a lot of people can break the 2:30 barrier in the world. There's very few people in the world that could do that. On top of that, he's a category 1 cyclist. He's, I don't know how many hundreds of races you've actually promoted and raced in, participated in. I believe you have well over, 15 Ironmans, full Ironmans?
Yeah, 18 now.
18 Ironmans that he's completed. So he lives that life. He's not just a YouTuber and all this stuff, but he actually lived that entire life of being a pro endurance athlete. And what we're here to talk about today, and this is something that's highly debated amongst athletes in the Muay Thai world, is running a essential part of becoming a successful Muay Thai athlete. Is it possible to supplement another endurance sport and have the same effectiveness that running would have on your endurance? And this is what, there's a lot of coaches out there that are old school, and they go, you know what? No run, no fight. And if you don't fucking run, I don't want to hear about it. You're not fighting. Like, you're not fighting, because that's what it takes to be a great fighter. And, and as we develop, sports science and understand how the body works, maybe that old school mentality isn't exactly accurate anymore. Although, I mean, I came up in that. I had to run for all the time. Every fighter's had to do miles. When I would go fight in Thailand, like, you literally, if you did not run, they would not look for a fight for you. It was a legitimate rule. And so Tim's here to educate us on that. And what are your thoughts on that? What do you think? Is there a more effective way to develop your cardiovascular ability than running?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think, everybody, and this just by the VO2 testing that we do on a bunch of your athletes, is, everybody's body manages and stores different energy. Sorry, my dog. you know, and just the way that the bodies react. Bowser. The mailman walked over. Yeah, my answer to that would be everybody's different. Everybody manages different exercises differently. And can one athlete maintain a better aerobic system doing one exercise over another? It could just depend on the athlete itself, right? Like, I don't think that you can just put everybody in one solid box and say that we all live in that box, because we are so different. Would I say that running is one of the most beneficial for fighters and cyclists and multiple other sports? Absolutely, no question about it. And there's a lot of science behind that. I mean, you can even go all the way back to high school when you look at track and field, and you have multiple coaches, even in high schools, that are saying, go out for track and field. It's only going to help you in all the other sports in the school, and it's going to make you a better athlete. And
even cyclists, from my understanding, cross-train with running. Swimmers cross-train with running. Like all these other endurance sports, athletes will cross-train with running. If I'm not mistaken, you're the one that told me Lance Armstrong has, what was his 5K time recently? It was like absurd. It was
it's obnoxious. Actually, he did a sub 3 hour marathon, I think almost the next year after he retired. So
unbelievable. He's an unbelievable. But so it's evident now that running is an important part. But is it how would I put this question? Would it be the most effective way to boost your endurance? For example, so fighting, I would say, to put it in terms as far as running is, I would say it would be like training for 800s, like an 800 race. That would be a 1 round, right? Yep. An 800 meter sprint.
Yep.
Now, if I'm fighting, you know, I'm getting hit while my heart rate is probably well beyond zone 2. It's not going to be at a resting rate. It's going to be probably at my peak rate. And training for that anaerobic kind of threshold where my heart rate is pounding really, really, really hard, and being able to maintain that and effectively perform. Now, are there sports that would help me keep my heart rate getting that high as efficiently as running would?
I think that's where the separation is, in my personal opinion. I think the one thing about running is you can control it. Like it can be either a controlled environment or, I mean, really in essence. So here's the biggest difference of that, right? Like, first and foremost, your objective is, okay, this run has to be an aerobic run, all aerobic run. And then the next run has to be an interval run.
And for people that don't know what that means, what is an aerobic run? I know what it means, but there's a lot of people out there that don't really have the knowledge base to understand what an aerobic run is, what an anaerobic run is, what a base run is. Can you kind of educate us on that?
Yep. So, the science part is the respiratory exchange rate. So what it says at certain levels and intensities that we're training at, we know that like 70% and under is always going to be like this nice, smooth, easy cruise mode. Like you could hold that all day long and just burn calories, right?
70% of what?
That's going to be of your max measured respiratory rate. And the only
your max heart rate, 70% of that, you'll be able to cruise, no problem.
Yep, you got
Obviously, it. Supplementing with glycogen as you eating gummies or sugar or Coca-Cola, whatever it is, and so that at that heart rate and understanding that physiology about your own body is important.
Yeah. It's huge. So then you go into the 80 percentile range, right? The 80 percentile range is that you keep referring to as that zone 2 range, right? Like we know that usually can be really comfortable somewhere in that, 80 to 85 range is getting to a point where you're still aerobic, but you're starting to push up into that nearing anaerobic area. And we know for a fact that the more that we train in the aerobic area, we put less stress on the system. And all we do is build pure muscle and oxygen and create bigger lungs, bigger hearts. And I mean, in essence, in the long run, I think everybody's goal is that we want to hold as much air capacity as we possibly can, right? And the only way we can do that is by staying in our zone 2, right? Because the science shows, like, as soon as you start training up into that zone 3, where you start accumulating some of that lactic acid, right?
And zone 3 would be like 85-90% of your max heart rate.
It would be. Yep.
That's really high. And you're starting to breathe really hard. You can't really maintain a conversation while you're running anymore. You're running, and every other word, taking a breath. And that would be probably what we would refer to as zone 3, or an anaerobic cardiovascular heart rate, right?
Yep. You're getting right onto that anaerobic threshold. So like, once you surpass that, you have to minimize the amount of time that you can actually sit up in there, because the lactic acid starts to build so quickly. Like, your heart just says, oh my God, I got to get a break. Your lungs say, I got to get a break. And you literally have to stop at that motion. Right.
And that's usually what happens about round 3. For some people, about round 1 at the end. And so you get that heart rate going really high. And if somebody hasn't been training to hold that anaerobic threshold, hold that heart rate, they're probably gonna have a hard time as far as cardio in the ring. Am I correct about that? So how would you increase that kind of cardiovascular abilities to be able so that hold a high heart rate and still perform? What kind of training would you need to do?
Again, this is my own personal recommendation, but first and foremost, I would say, build the endurance, that, the aerobic engine, and keep trying to hit that and keep burning that and keep building it and building it and building it. And that's, and those are going to be comfortable, longer runs. Like, and I'm not saying you have to go out and run for an hour and a half or whatever, even if it's only going out for, a 6-mile run, right? Like, that's really important that you just keep that all in an aerobic run. What I would say is, if this is fairly new to an athlete, you would want to maybe start with little intervals of 1 minute, 2 minute, where you're coming up to your anaerobic threshold. And the way that, like, without doing testing and all of that, the way that you probably will feel it as you're running is you will literally have to kind of, not stop running, but take a second breath and just like try to catch your breath, because you no longer can maintain the breathing pattern that you had before that, right? Because now what happens is the brain says, oh my gosh, there's lactic acid in the system, right? Like, I'm not getting enough oxygen anymore. Oh my God, I got to catch my breath. I got to try to move more oxygen. Okay.
Got it. So it's trying to refill all of those gaps in your lungs, trying to get an extra burst of oxygen in there.
Yeah, and you're trying to just get rid of all that carbon dioxide, right? Like, it's just saying, I'm not getting in all the oxygen that I used to. It's lactic acid coming in and building. And so there's a couple of things that happen in that. Like, the brain, all of a sudden, it starts to realize that the lactic acid is coming in and you're not getting the oxygen that you once thought you did. And through running, and this happens through running, I'm sure with fighters, as you're getting into the third round, you're probably feeling similar things, is that the brain now all of a sudden starts to say, I'm going to start moving some blood, and I'm going to start moving the blood to the major organs, right? Because I know now that it's not getting the oxygen that it needs to. So in order for me to kind of sustain my effort, I need to pull some blood from certain areas and start overflowing, the lungs, the liver, the kidney, because those are all areas that are processing the carbon dioxide, which it's trying to get rid of, right? Because you're building lactate. So, and what happens as a result of that, and I know this is, every fighter is going to know exactly what I'm talking about. You get to a point where all of a sudden, you lift your arm up and all of a sudden it feels heavier. You start to jump around in the ring, and all of a sudden your legs are starting to feel flat. They're not as, they're not as sharp as they once used to be.
Right.
And all of a sudden everything just starts to get heavier. And the reason being is just, you're not having the blood flow that you once had. You're not having the oxygen flow that you once had. And now all of a sudden your body is just saying, how am I going to catch up on all of this? Right. So what I would say is, it's kind of a progression that you would want to go through in training, especially if you're fairly new to it, is you want to build your system up enough that you can hold a threshold that would be close to whatever your duration of matches would be. So say 15 minutes, right? So three times 5 rounds, or, 3 times 4 rounds, whatever you want to say. And I would personally just say, okay, as I'm doing that, I'm just going to, week by week, start chipping away and start building up that lactate threshold and that anaerobic threshold, just by constantly nudging that window. And the only way you can do that is by doing those nice steady efforts that say, I'm going to hold that level and try to sustain that level. And what you'll find is there's a couple different benefits. And this is one thing that I really, really advocate for running, is it starts to become this big mental game, right? You're sitting out there, you know that you're still looking at your watch. I still got like 7 more minutes to go at this effort. Like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to hold this. And then your brain starts talking all this negative stuff, right? And everybody knows. Yep. Every fighter knows what I'm talking about. Like, you just start having this internal battle. And I think what it really teaches you as you're progressing through these training modules is that you just become so much more mentally strong, especially when you get into a run or get into the ring, and all of a sudden you're starting to go anaerobic and you're like, oh my God, I lived here for 15 minutes. I know I can do this now.
Yes. I've told this to my athletes a lot. And this is, I personally feel, why running is the superior cardiovascular exercise. Not just because you can control it a lot easier, you can push yourself, cycling, you get breaks. Swimming, you'd have to do a lot of swimming and be pretty proficient at it to match the level of cardio that running would do in swimming, right? Like any kind of endurance sport. And not to mention, something you told me a long time ago is we are evolved to run. This is the sole purpose of our body, to move in this way. We are built to move this way. We're not built to sit on a bicycle. We're not built to swim with our arms. We are built to run. And we evolved over millions of years to get there. And so
it was actually vital, right? At certain point, I learned that for communication. I learned not too long ago about how their runners played such a huge part in like moving information. So they would have these relays that would go from, this country to that country, and they would run that message from the runner to that runner to that runner, and the fastest of the fast were actually called for that position. So it's pretty neat, the history back there.
It's pretty cool. And the one thing that's not spoken about in running is the mental grit that you acquire from running. The toughness. As a matter of fact, I have a couple really good fighters. Some of my best fighters I've ever had were runners. I had a fighter, Beth Cook. She was an elite. One of the few that could probably say, like, I forgot what her 1,000 was, but it was an absurd number. Like, she was close to being Olympian. And I think she was on full scholarship. She told me that she would get runner's high literally every time she ran. I was so jealous.
Yeah, I wished I did that.
I got it one time in my life, and it lasted for like, I think 2 minutes. And when I realized it was happening, it fleeted. It was gone. And I think I called you right away. I was like, I think I got it. Because I saw on my Garmin that my heart rate was going down and my speed was going up. It was the first time. And so, but the grit, the mental toughness that you get from running, and nobody's watching you. Nobody's yelling at you. Nobody's pushing you.
Yeah.
That's something that honestly, it's very hard to replace. And a lot of coaches don't speak on this. Like, yes, running is important for cardiovascular strength, for, building your recovery, if you run a specific way. With my athletes, I make them do one long run a week, and I actually make them go to the track with Tim. He does a free track day on at the Marcos Deniza High School, and it's every Wednesday at 5 a.m. And a lot of my athletes started and grumbled at me because I made them go. Oh my God, why are you doing this? And then when they fight, I remember, I think I had one of my fighters, Ruben. He was like, "Oh my God, I'm so tired." And I looked at him like, "Ruben, you're still bouncing." He's like, "I'm so tired." And he's bouncing and shadow boxing at the end of the fight. I'm like, "Ruben, you're not tired. You're bouncing. You're in your brain thinking that you're tired. But you've gotten to this heart rate so many times that you're used to it. You're not even aware that you're there and you're comfortable there now." And so, like, I think an anaerobic, like a super hard anaerobic workout, because all of the Muay Thai workouts are anaerobic. And so for a Muay Thai athlete, their time in the aerobic base, which is that 70%, is very few and far in between. It's very, very, so I make them do it as, they run, 3 miles before they train. And then once a week they have to run, minimum, and I say minimum of an hour, ideally 90 minutes. 90-minute run, nice and slow. Go chat with your friends. Another thing that I make them do, that Tim provides a service, is a VO2 max test. I beta tested this at the last US Open, and I wanted to bring some science into fight camps. And that test shows me their, I would say, their ability for cardio. I wouldn't say that they would be in good shape, even though they had a really great VO2. Doesn't really mean you're gonna be in great shape, but you have the ability to do a lot more than most. I actually am, Tim does some calculations with his hardware, and it finds all of their zones very accurately. And another thing that I did that was really well was get their metabolic rates. And what's cool with that was I can tell them, at which heart rate they should be running at to burn fat. And everybody varies. I had a fighter, Tyrell literally burns only sugar. This guy, I've never, you showed me his thing and I'm like, where is he going to burn fat? Like, this guy just, no wonder he has this sweet tooth, because he's burning sugar pretty much anytime he works out. And so I would tell him, you're going to have to walk to burn fat, because as soon as you get anywhere near your zone 2, you're already burning glycogen and so, because he just has so much muscle mass. And so that was, can you explain that a little bit better than I did, maybe, as far as like your metabolic rates and your, systems of fuel and energy to your body? Because I know there's multiple systems of energy that your body can how they receive, when they're using glycogen, when they're using fat as their main, can you explain that to us a little bit?
Yeah. So, like, as we were talking about, when you really start looking at the zone breakdowns, that if you're 70 and under, it's usually categorized as that you're pretty much just burning an all fat phase, because that's, like I said, you're in snooze mode. You can walk, run, do whatever you want in that mode. You usually use that. You'll use that as two different things, both a fat burn workout, or another is if you're just trying to lose weight. I mean, that's just a great way to just kick on that fat burn mode, and
that's exactly what I tell my athletes that are a little heavy.
So that's like a jog, right? That's me, right? Super heavyweight guys. I don't like the I was gonna try to see if I can segue that in, because I can't stand running, so this whole conversation is fun. But no, it's like time. It takes a lot of time, and there's other reasons why for me it's just tough to get out there and commit an hour to running, but I have. But the impact is tough. on the bigger body. And, so you're saying kind of like a jog is that lower threshold, or like a
sometimes
jog.
Even for some people, a very fast walk.
Yeah. Yeah. It just kind of depends on where your heart rate is and where your conditioning falls in there, and really what your goal is. Like for you, if your goal is, do I really need to run this the whole time? Is that my objective, that I need to jog this whole time? Then what's the purpose of that? Or are you actually out there and your goal is that you're trying to get movement and keep your, your body conditioned, and movement is what you can do by that. That's fine. I mean, not everybody has to run everything, but I think it's just whatever your goal and your objective is important to know on that. Like burning fat is really important. If your goal is that you want to stay lean and you want to try to maybe lose some weight. But then as you start looking up into that zone 2, okay, so now you're starting to say, okay, I'm starting to trickle in some carbohydrate needs here, right? Like I need to start getting some calories in, and it's got to be in forms of basically sugars, right? Like those are
sugars are more readily available form of energy, whereas fat, your body has to work to get it, right? They have to break it down, and that's why
like diesel versus alcohol, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So I mean, I think what's important to know about that is like even understanding like how your body burns things is vital to how you want to have success to this. Because if you're in zone 1 and then you're not seeing that you're really getting any results even from the fat burning phase, first and foremost, I would challenge, like in some cases you can go up to 90 minutes, right, before you would even want to start craving more food in any form at all, because your body is just stored that much behind it, right? And so I think what we have a tendency to do is we want to just start taking in food after an hour or after 45 minutes, and your brain is saying, I'm hungry, right? Where if your goal is that you're trying to burn fat and that you're trying to lose weight, then you just want to suppress that and just wait for that until maybe your whole workout's over. If you're going over 90 minutes, then I would say, yeah, you want to take in some smaller calories that you can, but don't overdo it in that, because again, then you're gonna ruin the whole purpose that you're out there.
Right.
And then you go into that zone 2. So now this would be, this is that sweet workout spot. This would be like your jog that you're probably talking about, where your heart rate would be up to like even just a decent run. I mean, you're not working hard at this phase, but you're running, right? Like this would be your 5 mile, what I would call a 5 mile base run pace, right? You're going to go out and just knock down a steady pace for 5 miles and know that you're going to get done, and you're still going to feel good afterwards. That's what phase you're in there. And the good thing about that phase is, one, that you are primarily burning mostly fat still, but you've now started to incorporate some of the carbohydrates that do it. But more so what you've done is now you've started to kick on more of that higher caloric burn rate, right? Which is, if people are trying to lose weight on this, you just have to be aware, okay, I'm no longer just in that fat burn phase, but I'm now starting to take in carbohydrates. Just going to have to be cognizant of how much, again, you're ingesting.
Right.
So my golden rule, even if you're in that zone 2, is go up to 90 minutes. Like I would tell you to eat something before you even do a 90-minute run, first and foremost.
Right.
Just walk out the door and expect you're going to run in a zone 2 run for 90 minutes and not get hungry.
I usually have a couple of bananas before I go out.
Yeah, you got to take in something. Kick start it out. Yep.
Yeah, I would say so. From zone 2, that would be more of a fat burning zone, and that's usually great for athletes because when I went to Thailand, every single day they are running 6 miles every day, and if you don't run every day, and they're running zone 2. Every day they're sitting there jogging, and they do it every day before I wake up at 5 a.m. I remember one time just like being done with it. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to run today. And I'm just like slapping myself in the face. Like, let's fucking go. Like, don't be a little bitch. Like, let's go. And so, and then, I was rooming with Rami at the time. And I remember Rami had already just fought, and I had to fight that next day, and he would just woke up and saw me slapping myself in the face. And I think I had a fight like that next weekend. And he was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" I'm like, "I'm so done with this shit. Like, I can't run anymore." He's like, and so he's just like, I remember him just laughing at me, like psyching myself out. Like, come on. Let's see. I was just talking to myself to get out there and run. But after a while, it just became like you just wake up, you go for a run, put your shoes, and you just start moving, and you get used to it after a while. But I thought it was interesting because those guys are lean. They are lean and they are in tip top shape. And I feel like it has to do with that daily base run, that zone 2 every single day. They're burning tons of fat while they do it every morning, right before they do a 3-hour session. And they do it every morning, Monday through Saturday.
So we're on the topic of Thailand running. So I guess this is a good segue, because before I went the first time, I remember Tiago telling me, like, about probably should start running and, get ready for, there's going to be climate changing as far as the heat and things like that. And so I was running starting here in Chandler before I went over to train, because I knew I wasn't fight training, but I went to train with the fighters, the same type of fight training everybody else was doing.
Yeah.
And I remember getting the Royal D, the Royal D from Thailand, the little, the electrolyte packet.
A sugar packet.
Yep, sugar packet with like electrolytes. And then in the morning, because they get up, it's butt crack of dawn, right, for running. And we would go over, Sitsong Pinong has the King's Park that's right across the way. And one morning specifically, so we're talking like running is always this pleasant and beautiful, lovely thing. Well, at the King's Park, on one day we were running, and I heard something like, as we're running down this path, like up, I saw the bushes jostle, and we're in Thailand, and I was like, that's big, whatever that was. And so all of a sudden I'm running, I'm probably, where you guys are talking about the zone 2, I definitely was probably there. I mean, I was a good pace, keeping up with the ties and everything. And out jumps this humongous lizard. And I was like,
I remember that day because I jumped over the lizard.
Yeah, there was
I ran, I was like, I don't have time for this. And I jumped right over the lizard.
Travis, I think, was there at that time.
Yeah. This lizard was massive. It looked like a crocodile.
Yeah, as a water monitor, they're gigantic. Yeah. So imagine that while you're out for a run, Timothy.
Yeah, at first I was thinking of a gecko. I was like, oh wow, that's
crazy. It's like a crocodile. Like, you look at it and everybody freaked out.
Yeah, like, if you don't know, you think it's something that's going to cause you a big problem. They may, but they typically don't, because they're around people all the time at the park. So
it was like a royal park. It was pretty cool, but I'm sure it went from zone 2 to zone 3 real quick after that, huh, Brandon?
Oh man, in the mental, I mean,
that was your mental strength work right there.
There was excuses to not run the following day.
Oh, that's hilarious. It's ironic that I happened to stumble across a YouTube video, and Tiago, you might be familiar with it too, but it was with a guy, Dylan the Machete, and he was. Are you familiar with that?
I am not.
Okay. Yeah. Anyways, so he ended up going over to Thailand to do, these different camps over there. And it's really funny because he was talking about how he goes, damn, like the worst thing that happened through it was they made us get up every dang morning to run a darn 10K, like 6 miles every morning.
10K every morning.
Every morning. Yep. He was clockwork. Yep. He's like, and, I went there in decent shape, and, he goes, I would advocate for those people that are kind of beginner to, to medium, and those people that are expert. He's like, I don't know necessarily the muscular benefit of it as you would get from the, being a beginner to intermediate, which I totally understand that respect. But he goes, what he did understand was it was twofold. It was not only for his cardiovascular, development, but it was, I guess, threefold. It was the fact that he had to get up every single morning and know exactly what he was going to do. He had to go and fight himself through a doggone 10K. And he said, and it was nothing more than just a mental strength exercise. And we had the running.
I still have days, as you guys, I told you guys that, Tim's my coach. And sometimes he'll put a workout on my calendar, and I'm looking at it, and I talk to my fiance, and I'm like, I got to get my head wrapped around tomorrow because this is going to suck. And I literally go to sleep picturing myself doing this 70-mile bike or whatever the hell I had to do that day.
Yeah.
And I'm going, oh my God, like this is going to kill me. But trying to be excited for it, like in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm going to achieve this really cool thing. I'm going to bike 70 miles. Who the fuck? Not a lot of people can do that. And, that took a lot of training to get there. And so like that positive, kind of like I had to literally like, because when I look at it and my legs are fatigued, I'm training for a race coming up next week, in 2 weeks. And so my legs are fatigued. I'm tired. I just want to stay in bed. My fiance is like, and I'm like, I got to do this now or else I won't do it. And it is definitely a struggle to actually, it's funny because my fiance is sometimes like, get your ass up, like, so that you can get back to me quicker. So she's like, go do the thing now. And I'll sleep while you, so when I wake up, you're here. And, I push myself through some of those days. I really don't want to train. I really don't. And, having that discipline, to do the thing that you don't want to do, is important because that kind of gives you that freedom. It gives you the freedom to achieve the things you want to achieve. Not because, especially on the days you don't feel like it. Like some people did. Some days you just don't feel like training at the gym. So, I love Muay Thai. Some days, there was days I just didn't want to fucking do it.
That was me this morning, bro. I mean, that was me this morning. I was looking at my 25 minutes, anaerobic, my little calisthenic, which most people would be like, oh, that's easy. But that I'm doing planks at 1 minute and 40 seconds.
Yeah.
That's my mental thing. Like holding that for that long, like I'm just like it's strenuous by the third one, but it's also mental. Like that's what I think about is those planks before I do my work.
Yeah,
it's mental.
It's no joke. So, in conclusion, I think it's safe to say that, and correcting me if I'm wrong, because if I'm wrong, I would love for you to correct me. Please do. You are the expert here, Tim. It is safe to say that there are alternatives. There are alternatives to getting the same cardiovascular ability than running. But with the caveat, big but, that running is the most efficient way to get there.
Yeah.
There's just, Brandon was talking about, man, I just don't have the time. And imagine now you have to get this cardiovascular strength. But for me, if I would run for an hour, the effort that I would need to do the equivalent of that would be probably a lot longer of a bike, a lot longer of a swim, like whatever other, you're going to have to put in a lot more time. And I'm a pretty decent cyclist, but I still know that running always gets my heart rate up faster. It's the only thing that gets my heart rate up to the top very quickly if I want it to.
Yeah.
For me to get on my bike and get to my max heart rate, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a long while. Yeah. It doesn't just go up suddenly. And so, it's safe to say if I'm not mistaken, that running is the most efficient way to get you and I saw this guy on Instagram, and I have to address it because I was talking about this before we got on. And it's this I don't even know if he's a fighter or not, but he was like, running is not essential. It's a non-essential activity for and maybe it is if you have some kind of injury, But his argument was, and I want to kind of ask you this, is he said that your body doesn't know that it's either running or swimming or cycling. And, you know, from what I understand, if I'm doing a VO2 max test, the numbers differ if I'm cycling versus if I'm running. So my zone 2 moves around. My fat burning zone moves around if I'm cycling. It's a lot, you know, I'm probably burning more glycogen while I'm cycling than if I'm running, or vice versa. I don't know, depending on the fitness ability. And, you know, I wanted to ask you that, Tim, because I really found it to be a little bit bullshit.
I don't even know how he can even state that. So here's the first fact. If you're swimming, you're jumping in water, you're buoyant. Right. You don't get that with running. So how your body is not, or your brain's not going to interpret the difference of that. First and foremost, go underwater for 3 minutes and see if you can hold your breath that long.
And physiologically, right? Like your body's not going to burn the same systems of energy if you're doing one activity versus another. Is that correct?
If you put it like apples to apples, zone 2 to zone 2 in each one of these sports, cycling, swimming, and running, and you put them based on the intensity, right? Your zone 2 is going to burn more calories in an hour than you will cycling and swimming. You just are going to burn.
I know that from personal experience. I know that from personal experience, but I wanted to ask an expert, because when I saw that, I was like, man, this is nonsense. Like this is not right. This is not physiologically, this isn't correct. What he just said.
I don't even know how he said that, because, okay, so cycling, you're sitting on a saddle for 1 minute, and then you might have to get out of a saddle for another minute. You're firing certain muscles when you're in the saddle, right? And then you're firing different muscles when you're out of the saddle. Like it's completely a different muscular
activity
workout.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, absolutely. I don't even know how he can, like, it would be like for me saying I can get, oh, you know what? I'm not even going to know the difference. I'm going to get in and do Muay Thai for 3 rounds, and I'm going to be fine because I'm not going to know any difference.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. And I wanted to get that confirmation. I didn't know, by the way, I didn't confer with my coach about this. As a matter of fact, like, I didn't know what he was going to say in this interview. I was just kind of curious and going to learn on the fly. I was like, in my head, I was like, I kind of know what he's going to say, but actually, you know, there's a couple of things that surprised me about it. And I learned a little bit more, with this interview. But
so is it essential though, right? So that we touched on it. So we're saying, you know, it's essential. I'm going to just say that for me, my experience thank God I started running before I went to Thailand, because that experience was intimidating for somebody that's out of shape and never fought and never really, you know, did that. For me, it was pivotal to know like how important it actually was, because when I got up that first morning with all the Thais and we got out to the King's Park and I'm running, you know, in Thai shorts, and I felt good. You know, I was a little probably slower than I needed to be, but I finished the run. We all got back to the place, and then I trained Muay Thai in the afternoon. And, you know, so for me, I feel like 100% essential. Without it, I would have probably not been in the shape that I was in out there. So I'm for it. Essential.
It's safe to say, in conclusion, that running is definitely the most efficient way of getting cardiovascular shape for fighting, at least. Although there are alternatives, but you're going to, so some people just have bad knees and they can't run, right?
Right.
We have people like that. So I have people like that, and I have to give them alternative workouts. And I'm like, you're going to wish you could run, because what I'm going to make you do to match this is going to suck way more. And you're going to wish you could run. And everybody does say that usually after I say that, because they're like, what the fuck is this? You want me to sit on a bike for how long? I'm like, if you want to get the same cardiovascular benefit that an hour run is going to do at zone 2 or zone 3, this is what you're going to have to do. and you'll thank me later when you're not, vomiting in the ring.
Yeah.
And so, now, Tim, if do you want to give a maybe like a final thoughts or anything about, maybe like address some of these Muay Thai athletes? These are Muay Thai pros and amateurs that are in our audience that are going to be listening to this. And what do you recommend as far as, endurance workouts and basic daily activities, or maybe just any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me it would be again, I was kind of talking a little bit about it, like whatever your belief is, it's fine with me. I mean, I have my beliefs, you have your beliefs, and it is what it is. Like, we're never going to convince somebody if they're so convinced that there's no other alternative to it, right? Like, we can try to give them all the science in the world, but if their belief is it's not truth, then it doesn't matter what we say. But
there's even a science to belief and how strong that is, right?
Yeah.
Like there's
so this is how I would challenge that. I would challenge and say, okay, you have a 15-minute fight coming up. Go over to South Mountain and run South Mountain up to the top of South Mountain for 15 or 20 minutes at a hard effort, and see where your head goes and see where you physically go. And tell me that's not going to benefit you in your fight. And
right.
I promise you it's going to benefit you in your fight. And
you go in some dark places when you're alone in a mountain.
and not only that, I mean, you're getting the muscular development, you're getting the cardiovascular development, right? You're burning tons of calories doing that. And then you're getting that mental development, right? So you're getting all the eggs in one basket right there. And the beautiful thing is it's all controlled by you, because you're the one that's running the pace up that mountain, right? And it's as consistent as you want to make it, or it can be as inconsistent as you want to make it. It's totally up to you. But I would first and foremost challenge them to do that, and tell me that after 15 minutes that's going to be compared to 15 minutes, say, on a bike or an elliptical or whatever else machine that you're going to do. And hands down, running is going to definitely be the winner in my book. But that's just one thing that I would say you could do. The other thing is constantly, like I said, keep pressing for 15 minutes. That, like, go do 5 3-minute intervals, at your anaerobic threshold, max effort for as long as you can for 3 minutes. Do that for 5 rounds. And if you do that and build up to that, you tell me that your fighting's not going to get better.
Yeah, I can tell you firsthand that my athletes have gotten better just from those kind of track workouts, where it's 3, 2, 1 minutes or 2-minute intervals times 10 times 20. And they're just getting to their max heart rate and then making it recover, max heart rate, making it recover. And so I know for a fact that it is beneficial, because I've seen it.
Timothy, is there somewhere people can get more, you do consultations or trainings, or anywhere we could direct anybody who wants to find out more about what you do and how you might help them?
Yeah, I mean, well, Tiago could probably tell you most of that too, but yeah, I mean, I do a coaching business called Excel and Beyond Coaching, and it's basically Excel as you would see it on your computer, and Beyond Coaching.
We're gonna put it up on the replay. We're gonna put up your link. Where people can find you. You're also a founder of a nonprofit. You want to tell us about that?
Yes, and actually Tiago is a big part of that too. So he's been part of that for years, and grateful for that too, by the way.
Grateful for you.
Yeah. So Together We Live was created. I had a niece that had what was called Pallister's Hull syndrome, and what that was is it was like a form of cerebral palsy, only none of her internal organs ever developed through birth. So she was for 2 years in a hospital on tubes, 14 different tubes, just trying to fight for life. And when she got out of the hospital, and as she was growing up, she turned 9 years old, and I asked her if she wanted to go do basically a race, a running race, which, you know, at that time was rock and roll had just come to the Valley. And I was like, this is going to be great. I'm going to get to do this with my niece. And oh my God, it's going to be a full circle of Dick and Ricky Hoyt. Anyways, that's a whole nother story. But
yes.
But anyway, so, you know, fast forward, she passed away when she was 10 years old. Literally.
And just so everybody understands, you pushed her on a chair through the race. She wasn't able to run.
My goal was that I was going to try to push her through the marathon, but she passed away a couple of months right before we were going to go do the race. We had done some fundraising, try to get a chair. And then she passed away. And so that kind of just left this blank hole. And to be honest, the best way to describe it is that she had no use of her arms or legs, right? So for her to cross the finish line is where we bring in other athletes like Tiago and a bunch of the other Excel athletes, and we pair them up with these athletes. We call them the athletes, and we are actually the support athletes, because I want everyone to know that just because they don't have the physical capabilities of being able to do it for themselves doesn't mean that mentally they're not ready to cross that finish line, just like every single one of us. Right. And I can show proof of that time and time again at all the races that we go to, and even at these training runs that we go to. Like, you come across to the finish right before they see their parents, and their eyes just glow and light up and scream, and they're like, "Oh my God, that was incredible!" But
amazing.
Yeah, so together we live, and it's all about doing two things. It's providing an opportunity for individuals out there that can't do something by themselves, and we have the arms and the legs for them to do that. And the second thing is, it's really kind of incorporating that all-inclusion atmosphere. So no matter what your disability is, what your illness is, if you're wounded veterans, you know, you could come and be part of this program. We would welcome and love to have you part of it. But it's just an all-encompassing inclusion, no matter what your ability is. And the goal is, you know, give them a positive experience and have some fun and meet a lot of awesome people. So
yeah, we've met a lot of very awesome people through these races. I just did a marathon with Chris, and he was just the character. It gave me crap the whole time, and it was so much fun. We laughed pretty much the entire way, and it was just a blast. And I always love those races. I look forward to hopefully pushing in some. I have some races in the future where I'll be a support athlete, and I can't wait for it.
Well, so you're down for the swim for sure at the Splash and Dash this month, right?
Awesome.
And then, you know, and if you want to run with her, you can run with her. So
I would love to do whatever I am allowed to do. And
the web address for that is, the URL is the number 2 Gether, GETHER, live live.com, correct?
Yep, that's it.
Yes. And if you want to
so I'm gonna throw that up here on the screen.
Thank you. Oh, and then
also Teresa commented too, Teresa Decker. So she says hard work works.
Yeah,
right.
You go, girl.
Ethan goes to the track days with Tim that he runs every Wednesday at 5 a.m. And it's pretty amazing what he does. He does it for free. I still, you know, commend you. Like, there's a lot of things that you're going on through your personal life, and if you decide if you wanted to share that or not, that's up to you. But you know, and even despite all those things, you still give so much, right? You get, you know, all these free trainings. A lot of coaches are charging for these trainings, and I'm just always amazed that, you know, how much he gives. He's a fantastic coach. If you guys ever want to get a VO2 max test, he can perform those. He can get those for you. He's the one that gets them done. If you wanted to get coaching, Tim can coach you guys outside. Doesn't have to be in state. Most of you guys are out of state. That's our audience. If you wanted endurance coaching, he's a fantastic coach. I think since I got hit by a car in September, I've lost about 38 pounds. I'm training for a cycling race I'm probably the best shape I've been in a very long time. And that's through his coaching. He gives me what I need to do. He tells me exactly how to do it, and I do it. If I struggle with something, I can call him up, and he always helps me out in any way he can. He's a fantastic coach and an inspiration. Yeah, Tim, like final thoughts?
Well, I mean, so yeah, I mean, I have no problem sharing. I was diagnosed with a terminal cancer January 2020, and I've taken basically regular chemo treatments every 2 months since then. And you know, it wears on you. Friday was another day that I was just back in there, and you know, you just kind of keep fighting the fight, right? And so for me, it's just, I think once my diagnosis happened, like I was always a kind of a pretty giving guy in general in the first place. It's just kind of who I am as a person. But I think after that diagnosis, my head started spinning of saying, okay, I want other people to find as much joy as that I've actually been blessed with in my life, being 58 years old now, and just the things that I've been able to experience in my life, and basically all through exercise and working out and meeting other phenomenal athletes. I mean, Tiago, you become one of my closest friends, right? And it's the sport, like, I just want everybody to experience that and have that in their life and be able to challenge themselves in different things that will, you know, that they once didn't think that they were capable of doing. And now they can look back and say, wow, I did do that. Like, that's pretty amazing. Like, I just sat in my room literally 2 weekends ago for 24 hours on my bike, my mountain bike, on a trainer, to hopefully raise awareness and raise some funds for a friend of ours, a team that got in to do the Boston Marathon. So the idea.
How many miles was that? Was like 300 and how many miles did you?
I did 384 miles.
384 miles in 24 hours. And this was shortly after a chemo round, no?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. No, that was actually right before my chemo round. So
before your chemo round. And I've raced with Tim multiple times. And he's definitely a great inspiration for me and everybody around him. Everybody that's around him finds strength in his strength. And he is probably one of the strongest people I know. And so every time, you know, that little bitch voice creeps in your head. And I say it all the time. There's a little bitch voice that tells you to stay in bed. You're all right. You don't need to train today.
Not on Monday.
Not on Monday or Tuesday.
It's
a
Friday.
Little whizzing in your ear. I think of Tim. And how much I've never heard him complain. Really, he does not complain. He pushes on, he pushes through, he gets the thing done that he's supposed to get done. And definitely, if somebody has an excuse to kind of sit back a little bit, it would be him, and he doesn't take it. And so for me, I find strength in that. And I find strength in surrounding myself with strong people. And it's paid out because, you know, every time I feel a little bit weak, and everybody does it. I find strength in my coaches, and having great coaches that really care will get you across the finish line, whether that be your hand raised in the fight, or whether that be across a marathon or a 50 miler or a 100 miler or whatever it is. The people around you really make a difference. I want to say a big thank you to you, Tim, for joining us and for inspiring so many people to be a better version of themselves, and doing so in such a positive way. Your legacy is absolutely amazing. And it continues to go on. It's so incredible what you've been able to accomplish. And I'm very grateful to be close friends with you, Tim.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, first and foremost, to, you know, just to share with you and you and Brandon and the rest that are listening to this. But, you know, I think it should be always in your mind that at any given time, this is the truth. You always have a choice. You always have a choice. Like, no matter what position you're in, you always have a choice. And Absolutely. This is the one thing that I push to everybody. Like, you know what? I don't want to hear the excuses. I don't want to hear it. Like, you made a choice and that was your choice. But you could have made a different choice. And it could have been a great choice, right? Like,
right. I agree.
Yeah. So just make good choices.
Yeah, make better choices for yourself, and yeah, I agree. Tim, thank you again.
Tim. Thank you, Tim.
This has been a fantastic segment. This has been a whole hour as it's ticking on, and it's been pretty amazing. We will be reposting this on YouTube, the entire and YouTube and Facebook.
Yeah,
and I highly suggest if you missed it to look out for that replay. Share it with people that need to hear this message. Share it with people that don't think running is essential.
Share it with the super heavyweights.
Hey, super heavyweights run.
No,
believe it or not,
I've done it.
They run. They do it. And that's how super heavyweight moving a lot of mass, man. Moving a lot of mass.
You better have some I run serious cardio for a big man. You better watch out.
I believe it, Brandon. So thank you again, guys, and this will conclude our podcast, and we will see you next week, where we're going to be talking to Vin Zavith, and we're going to talk about responsibilities of athletes when it comes to promotions. What's important? Is it a promoter's main responsibility to promote, or does the athlete hold some of those responsibilities? We're going to talk about an up and coming promoter here in the Valley that is making some waves, and I want to talk to him about what he's doing, and as a fellow promoter, his take on all those things and what his future plans are. Again, thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
And tune in next week, guys. Thank you.
See ya.